Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Very pleased to say, joining us, Mark Ogden, senior writer for ESPN, alongside Andy Dunn, chief sports writer for the Daily Mirror and Sunday Mirror. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run through the back pages. This is the Daily Mirror. Take a hike. United fans fury at new ticket price increase. Phil Foden, meanwhile, fires up City in the States, they say, while Mudryk is to battle ban of 4 years. The Times back page, Mudryk faces 4-year FA doping ban, while Lions pick 9 from England. The rugby story of the day. Mudryk charged over doping. The Telegraph front page, the sports supplement. Pope sees off Bethel, staying on number 3. The cricket story, while Smith's moment of truth. Farrell calls on playmaker to deliver for Lions. Both Finn Smith and Marcus Smith make the Lions lineup. Kicked in the teeth, fans fury as United introduce huge price increase for biggest games next season. The Express going with that story, as well as Red Rico's fuming. Rico Lewis sent off. And in the eye, at least Foden's having fun. City star puts rough season behind him at Club World Cup. Everton continue revamp by hiring United youth boss. And Pope sees off threat of Bethel to retain number 3 spot. That cricket story again. And in the Star, their take on the Manchester United ticket pricing. Pure greed. The gym delivers kick in the teeth with £97 Old Trafford tickets. They cover the Rico Lewis story. And also Spurs new head coach Frank's on the attack in his first interview, talking about his philosophy. I'll come to you, Mark Ogden. A patch you cover well in the Mirror. Take a hike, the headline. United fans fury at new ticket price increase. It's, I guess, deemed a categorisation system, Mark, but is it a poorly veiled, blatant hike?
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those situations where Man United fans are taking a bit of a whack over the head. It's the fixtures come out today, and it's a pretty tough start for United next season, and they're going to have to pay more for the privilege to watch one of the worst teams in the Premier League last season play. So, look, the situation is, as we know, over the years, lots of teams have had Category A, B, C, and D matches in the Premier League. And I suppose if you're a Man United fan, you've paid for that on the other side of the coin, because when you go to an away game, a Man United game is generally a Category A fixture because they take so many away fans. So, obviously, away fans have been charged a bit less recently because of the £30 deal they've had. But over the years, United fans have had to pay extra. Now, on this occasion, they are deciding to increase the price of home games. And it's a situation whereby the category, I've just got the numbers written down here, the Category A tickets will, if you watch it, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, for instance, it will cost you at least £59 to watch the game, up to £97. Now, by comparison, Man City's Category A fixtures are between £40 and £60. So it's a massive difference. So Man United are going to be much more expensive than Man City in terms of watching Category A games. And you could argue that the product on the pitch is vastly inferior to what Manchester City are offering at the Etihad. So if you're a Man United fan, you've got a lot of reasons right now to be angry with the owners at the club and people that are making the decisions. And this is another one. But their argument will be in counter that they have to find a way to plug the gaps that they've obviously found financially. And again, the fans are having to foot the bill.
Certainly are. Back page of the Express, Andy. Kicked in the teeth. David McDonnell reporting that matchday tickets could rise to £97 compared to last season's most expensive price of £66. It seems pretty brazen in a cost of living crisis, Andy, but is the point that there's a supply there? There's more of a supply, whether it's counterintuitive or not, than there is at Manchester City. That's why the tickets are higher. More people want to go there.
Yeah, and a couple of things, Teddy. As Mark just referenced, the timing. I mean, it's just almost typical of United in recent years. This day should be about the announcements of the fixtures. And as Mark says, a tough start for Manchester United, but a very, very, very exciting start. A new start, they'll hope it is, the fans. So on the same day, it's announced that the prices are going to be increased. And this categorisation of games, again, it's just so ironic. The idea that this Manchester United team can be involved in anything known as a Category A game, they certainly can't. They're all Category C. The two Category C games are, I think, Wolves and Sunderland. And that's quite insulting in a way. It's United who are Category C. And it comes on the back of big payoffs, say, for the likes of Dan Ashworth. It comes on the back of huge wages and signing on fees for players who haven't made it. Sancho, Anthony, we could go on. It comes on the back of, news that Casemiro, had they qualified for the Champions League, would have had it entitled to a 50 grand a week bonus. All these things, it comes on the back of people being made redundant to Manchester United. and now the fans are paying. And we've seen, don't forget, protests in Manchester United where supporters who are in what United consider prime selling position behind the dugout protesting and having to move their seats. Now, listen, what I would say is that United aren't the only club that are increasing ticket prices. We all know that, but it's just a bad look at the wrong time for Manchester United when it should be about how they're going to rebuild this team, how they're going to have a fresh start next season and put the troubles behind them.
Headline in the Star, Mark, pure greed. Sir Jim delivers kick in the teeth with £97 Old Trafford tickets. Mark, could this impact the attendances? What's your read on it? Is it changing inevitably the historic fan base of the club?
Well, this is the classic catch-22 that United fans are in, because they know, the owners will know that more often than not, Old Trafford will be full, especially for games against Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, the biggest games of the season. So that I think they're taking a gamble, that Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazers, that the United fans will still turn up. And we saw it last season. There were lots of protests against the ownership last season at United. Marches outside the ground, sittings after the game. But every time you went to a game at Old Trafford, it was full. So the fans haven't yet decided to, really vote with their feet and not turn up. Now, if 20,000 empty seats appeared at Old Trafford for a Premier League game, then that would strike home. That would be a real message to the owners that this can't go on. But until that happens, the owners will say, well, the fans will keep turning up. They always turn up, and they always have done. So this is where we're at. It's up to the United fans now if they're really unhappy not to turn up. But the kind of the gamble that Ineos are taking is there's so many Man United fans in this country and across the world that they will fill the ground regardless. But it's quite a short-sighted move, because obviously you want to get fans on side. I can't think of any fans or any clubs that have won major honours with a really unhappy and disgruntled fan base. Everyone seems to be marching in the same step at the successful clubs, and that isn't happening at United right now. There's disharmony all over the place, and it's reflected on the pitch. So it's a gamble they're taking. My suspicion is that Old Trafford will be full as usual next season, so they'll claim they've won, but it's not great for the average fan who finds it really hard to afford to pay for match tickets.
Particularly if you want to take children, etc. Andy, we mentioned the fixtures there. Manchester United kicking off against Arsenal on the 17th of August, live on Sky Sports, 4:30. What was your take on their fixtures and how much the pressure might just be increased that little bit with stories like this for Ruben Amorim and company?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a really, really tough start. I heard Andy Cole speaking earlier on Sky about what a tough start it is. And I'm one of these people, if you write a story about fixtures and say United have got a tough start or Arsenal have got a tough start, you often get comments come back saying, well, they play everyone twice and, there's no easy games or, in the Premier League. Of course, that's fundamentally wrong. If you have a tough start, it can affect your confidence. It can get a manager to the sack. You can't build up any momentum. I think it's a really, really tough start for Manchester United. And I think I looked at the half a dozen games, and they've got, in those half a dozen games, they've got 4 teams from last season's top 10. The average finishing positions of teams that United and Arsenal have got in those opening 6 games are really, really high compared to anyone else. They are the toughest starts in the Premier League. So I think it's an incredibly important start for Manchester United. He will be under pressure after 6 games if those games don't go well. On the flip side, of course, if he was to get a good haul of points out of those 6 games, that would give him an enormous boost for the rest of the season.
Certainly will. We'll see how it happens with Manchester United. Let's talk Tottenham Hotspur now, Mark. Popping back into the back page of the Star, top right-hand side, Frank's on the attack. Alan Smith reporting Thomas Frank will urge Tottenham to carry on taking risks. I tell you what, Mark, what did you expect of this? They've had the gung-ho Ange Postecoglou. I thought it'd be like a warm blanket with Thomas Frank by comparison, sitting in front of the fire with your feet up, but not so. He was talking a good game, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, I think his boss, Daniel Levy, kind of set the tone at the start of the week by saying that Spurs want to win the league. So that's what he set Thomas Frank as his objective, and that's going to be a tough task for any Tottenham manager. It's 1961 was the last time they won the league, and they haven't really come close many times since. So, but I think Thomas Frank is a good appointment. He knows the Premier League. He knows what it takes. Is he the guy that can take Spurs into the top 4 consistently? Time will tell, but obviously he's earned the right to have the chance. But yeah, you need a coach to talk positively when he's just taken over the job. You don't want a guy to come in and say, it's going to be tough this year, it might be in a relegation battle again. You need somebody to talk up and, basically sell season tickets and get people interested. So I think Thomas Frank is doing that. I think it will be a better season for Tottenham next year in terms of the league. Whether if they win a trophy, that will have to be the aim next season to match this season in terms of the way it ended. But I think he'll make Tottenham better in the league. But whether he can take them from where they generally are, which is 6th, 7th, 8th, to be a top 4, top 3 team, a title-winning team, that's a big, big leap for Tottenham at any point in the last 60 years.
He was very respectful towards Ange Postecoglou, wasn't he, Andy? And this need to take risks, he said. What did you make of his comments all round?
Yeah, well, I think what he's doing, and I think what's important that he does, is that, listen, Tottenham finished well below Brentford last year, but he's gone to a bigger club. And I think it's important that, with respect, he doesn't act like, again, with greatest respect to Brentford, he doesn't act like a Brentford manager. The sorts of things that Mark referred to there, that he could say, well, we might have a good season and, we'll do our best, etc., play some nice football. That was okay at Brentford. It's not okay at Spurs, even though they finished, in 17th place last year, even though they were well below Brentford. So I think he's making the distinction that he is taking a different step now. This is a big challenge for Thomas Frank. He can no longer be, I wouldn't say indulged, because he hasn't been indulged, but he's admired for basically keeping Brentford in the Premier League and producing some good football and producing some good players that are then sold on. That's not going to be the case at Spurs. Whether we think it's totally unrealistic or not, what Daniel Levy said and what Thomas Frank said, his objectives are to re-establish that club as one of the so-called old-fashioned Big Six. And that's got to be his objective. He's got to speak and have ambitions like a Big Six manager, and that's what he's come out with today.
Yeah, Levy's talking to Mark about targeting to the Premier League and the Champions League, but at Spurs there is also this, I guess, history, this focus on entertaining. Do you expect Frank to be someone that could ride that balance?
You're right about Tottenham. They have this history for entertaining, but they need to win things. And, they've had some pretty dour managers over the years that have not entertained and not won things. So I think Thomas Frank, his style at Brentford has been exciting, but he's also quite pragmatic as well. But that's probably what Tottenham need. Clubs that have a style of play, they tend not to win things. It's the clubs that just want to win things, and they think about how they played afterwards. So, he's a guy that knows the Premier League. Does he know the Champions League? No, because he's not managed in it. But I think that is a different step. I think he'll make Tottenham exciting, but, are they going to be, one of the most exciting teams in the Premier League? I'm not too sure about that. But it'll make them better, and that's the main thing. It'll make them better at the back. And when you're better at the back, you've got better chances going forward. So I think it's a good move, but can he be the guy that takes the leap? Again, we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Intrigued to see Spurs under Thomas Frank. Let's pause and go to Chelsea and Mykhailo Mudryk. Times, one of many papers covering this story. Andy Mudryk faces 4-year FA doping ban. Ukrainian was suspended for positive test in December, positive test for meldonium. We understand that he believes his sample was contaminated. He's been out of action for 6 months or so, Andy, with this, provisionally suspended. But how long and complicated is the road for Mudryk and I suppose his employer's Chelsea?
Yeah, well, it's these cases can be long and drawn out, hence the fact that the FA have just charged him now. And as you say, the positive findings were back in December. I think it's important, as you've said, Teddy, to stress that at the time, Mudryk denied knowingly taking any banned substance. And he was supported by Enzo Maresca publicly. And obviously, he hasn't played since. He was seen, I think, out of the Conference League final, wasn't he, as a spectator. But I think it's in the best interest of all. These are serious charges. It goes without saying. It's in the best interest of all that these get sorted sooner rather than later, because you can imagine appeal, etc. For the players' case, for Chelsea's case, let's hope this is sorted before the start of the season. Yeah,
it's an intriguing story, isn't it? In some ways, Mark, for Mykhailo Mudryk. He's hired the lawyers that Paul Pogba used as well. He got his 4-year ban reduced to 18 months on appeal at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Does it become a pretty intense legal battle now to decide Mudryk's fate?
Yeah, the Pogba situation will give him hope, won't it? Because Pogba had a 4-year ban initially, and that was reduced to 18 months. And, if Mudryk's already served 6 by being on a kind of a provisional suspension, there's light at the end of the tunnel if he can get it down to 18 months. But to prove that he didn't take it, he has to somehow prove that A, he didn't mean to take it, and B, he can explain how it found its way into his body. Now, that's a difficult thing, because the substance that we're talking about, apparently it's only available in Russia and the Baltic states. So that theory has led to the suggestion that it wasn't a doping offence that happened in the UK. It must have either happened on international duty or erroneously when he was back in Ukraine. So it's a really difficult situation for Mudryk to be in. If he has to prove that he didn't take it, I don't know how he does that, even if he is honest in the fact that he didn't do it. So it's very difficult for him to prove that he wasn't doping purposely, but it's a long road for him, and it's going to be a tough one. But yeah, he's got the right people, I suppose, to take his case, considering what happened with Pogba.
Yeah, Mudryk has reiterated tonight he hasn't done anything intentionally wrong in this situation. We'll see how it plays out. I just wonder, Andy, whether you suspect with this making of several papers, the Telegraph, Mudryk charged over doping as well, whether it's something that players coming up have to be increasingly vigilant about in terms of diet, nutrition, supplementation, particularly players that travel to different countries.
Oh, incredible. And I think, the clubs are increasingly aware of that, and absolutely monitor, because it's, in general in sport, it's no longer, ignorance of what is going in your body is no longer an excuse. That applies to all athletes in any sport, that is not considered an excuse that you are unaware, or so the idea that it is unknowingly entered your system. Well, actually, the fundamental principle for any sportsman or sportswoman should be actually there's no such thing as unknowingly. You should know exactly what goes into your body. Yes, and I'm pretty certain now clubs and players will be even more vigilant than they've ever been.
OK, Andy, Mark, thank you very much for now. We will take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including these two stories in the eye. At least Foden's having fun. City star puts rough season behind him at the Club World Cup. And Everton continue revamp by hiring United youth boss.
Young kid that came in January didn't look very convincing. And I think when City play, Juventus in the final game, that's the game that could decide who plays Real Madrid in the next round. Although Real have drawn with Al Ahly tonight. Look, Al Hilal tonight, I should say. It's difficult because in those situations it's really hot. The crowd isn't great. It's a time of year they don't really playing. But Foden, at least after the difficult season he's had, he looked like he stepped up and it's taking his chance. Maybe he realises that this month could be the launch pad for next season, which ends with the World Cup. So perhaps he's putting the last year behind him. But it's only one game, it's one goal, but it's a positive at least. It's been a long time since he scored.
Yep, we'll see how the rest of the season unfolds in terms of the summer tournament, the World Club Cup, and how those new signings fit in. Let's talk about Everton and change there. They continue their revamp on the eye, dipping back below the Foden story here. Everton continue revamp by hiring United youth boss, exclusive by Mark Douglas and Pete Hall. How much of a coup is it to land Nick Cox? Andy, do you think, the Manchester United academy chief, becoming Everton's technical director?
Well, it seems that Nick Cox is very highly regarded, and you only have to look at the work that he's done at United's academy since being head of that academy. I think it's probably since 2019. Obviously, they won the FA Youth Cup in 2022, and more importantly, they produced players for the first team, most notably, obviously, Kobbie Mainoo, who has obviously now won, I think it's 10 caps for England. So he's clearly, while other aspects, other departments of Manchester United Football Club have not been working properly over the last half a decade or even longer, that one certainly has, and he's been in charge of that. So it's a coup in that extent. I'm sure Manchester United will have transition plans, so I don't think it'll be a massive blow for them in that context. But it's good for Everton because they're now restructuring the whole thing. Angus Kinnear, chief executive, Nick Cox now coming as technical director, and they've got other people who are in there now. I think it's Nick Hammond and James Smith, who's coming from Manchester City. So positive signs for Everton fans from new owners, the Friedkin Group.
Yep, absolutely. Positive signs for Rory McIlroy. Let's switch to golf at the end of the US Open in its final round. Very difficult weekend all told, though. It seems a happier ahead of the next event on the PGA Tour. But here, Oliver Brown writing that McIlroy's transformed into golf diva in chief. In fairness to Oliver Brown, a little bit of a misleading headline here, Mark. He does actually praise McIlroy's general conduct and spokesman-like role that he's played for golf, particularly the PGA Tour, but says that's what makes it even more troubling, this change since he won the Masters. It's an important piece, isn't it, I suppose, Mark, because it's not Rory McIlroy, a fresh kid on the block. He's someone that we perhaps have to appreciate for what he's done in the past, and maybe that's why it is concerning, a change in personality.
It is concerning, especially with his comments at the weekend, how he's struggling even to get up for an Open on his home turf in Northern Ireland next month. So that was the point that I think struck a lot of people's kind of alarm bells ringing, because Rory McIlroy should be the guy that's kind of desperate to play in that tournament at Portrush. But it does take a lot on Rory McIlroy. He's kind of become the self-appointed spokesman for the PGA Tour. He's probably the most high-profile player. He won the Masters, which made him the first player to do the Grand Slam for quite a long time, and ended his long battle for it. So it does seem to carry a lot. And I think at the weekend at the US Open, it was probably just a little bit too much. He snapped a little bit. He had to go to the media. He just didn't seem happy with the world. But maybe I've seen the stuff you're running tonight, that his latest interview looks a bit more happy, more content. So perhaps it's just a weekend wobble. We don't know. But yeah, the Open is a big one for Rory McIlroy in Northern Ireland. So hopefully he's back to his best for that.
It's about 30 or 40 seconds. Andy, your take on this? McIlroy said, I think he's earned the right not to speak to the media at the US Open. It's probably fair, hasn't it, in his case?
Sort of fair in the sense that he normally does, but having said all that, there's probably no golfer got better press than Rory McIlroy. He has benefited from talking to the media enormously. So I think on that level, it's a little bit swings and roundabouts like that. My thing with Rory McIlroy, and Mark referenced in trying to get up for future tournaments, is you just wonder, now he's completed the Grand Slam, is that enough for him? And it sounds sometimes as though it is enough. Hard to get back on the horse. When Tiger completes this Grand Slam, he won the next 2 majors. Rory has not done that and doesn't look like winning any more at the moment in his current form. So I just wanted Rory McIlroy, a brilliant player, back.
Well, the Open Championship coming up next month, we shall see. Andy, Mark, thank you for your company on Backpages tonight. We'll see you again soon. If you missed any of the show, remember Backpages tonight, repeated at hour. Also available as a podcast. Download Backpages wherever you get your podcasts. Join us again on Thursday. The guests are Jonathan Liew and Henry Winter. Up next, we'll hear from the Tottenham Hotspur new head coach talking about risk and being very respectful as well to Ange Postecoglou. That interview with Thomas Frank coming up.
Interesting. Looks like they've shuffled things around at half-time.
GrosvenorCasinos.com sponsors Sky Sports News.